For centuries, textbooks claimed Vikings only set foot in North America for a fleeting moment around the year 1000. That story is now unraveling. New discoveries, from radiocarbon-dated tools to traces of Norse settlements deep in the Arctic, suggest their presence was deeper, bolder, and lasted generations longer than we believed. If true, the entire timeline of European contact with America collapses. So why was the evidence hidden for so long? Greenland's Norse settlers faced a harsh reality. Their colony, established in the late 10th century, was surrounded by ice and stone, with almost no trees in sight. Timber was more than a building material, it was a lifeline. Without forests, every plank mattered for houses, ships, and simple repairs. This scarcity pressed on every household, turning wood into a currency of survival. Medieval Icelandic law, recorded in the Gragas, spelled out the consequences of cutting another's driftwood or timber. Fines were steep, and disputes over even a single log could land a family in court. With driftwood scarce and local shrubs too fragile for construction, Greenlanders looked west. The sagas recall this desperation. In one passage, Leif Erikson's crew sails in search of Markland, a place where the woods were so thick they could scarcely see the sky. The search for timber wasn't just about comfort. Without enough wood, ships couldn't be built or repaired. Greenland's isolation grew as vessels rotted, unable to be replaced. The colony's very link to the outside world, trade, news, and kin, depended on finding new sources of lumber. This need drove explorers across unknown seas, risking storms and starvation for a chance at survival. Timber from North America began to appear in Greenland's settlements. Archaeologists have traced fragments of North American oak and pine in the ruins of Norse farms, far from any native forests. These finds match saga accounts of repeated voyages to harvest wood, suggesting organized expeditions rather than accidental landings. The economic pressure was relentless. For the Norse, venturing west was not a matter of curiosity, it was a matter of staying alive. This relentless drive for resources set the stage for the first attempts at settlement beyond Greenland. The need for wood, sharpened by law and necessity, pushed the Norse to explore and eventually to build new outposts on the edge of the unknown. In 1960, Helge Ingstad and Anne Stine Ingstad arrived at the windswept tip of Newfoundland, armed with saga clues and a hunch. Local fishermen pointed them to grassy mounds at Lance au Meadows, where the earth concealed something far older than any memory. The Ingstads began to dig, uncovering the thick, rectangular outlines of sod walls. One by one, the shapes matched the blueprints of Viking Age halls. 8 turf buildings, some with central hearths, others with benches along the walls. The largest structure stretched nearly 28 meters, echoing the great halls of Iceland and Greenland. Beneath the collapsed roofs, the soil yielded proof no saga could provide. Iron nails and rivets, forged by Norse smiths, lay scattered in the workshop's floor. A bronze cloak pin, its simple, ring-headed design unmistakably Norse, rested in the debris. In another room, a spindle whorl carved from stone hinted at women spinning wool, a task as ordinary in Greenland as in Norway. These were not the tools of local indigenous groups, but the everyday objects of a seafaring people from across the Atlantic. The workshop's remains revealed more than domestic life. Charred fragments of bog iron, slag, and a blackened hearth spoke of iron-making, a technology unknown in the Americas before European arrival. The Norse had set up a forge, smelting local ore into nails to repair ships battered by ocean storms. Every artifact told the same story. This was not a fleeting camp, but a settlement built to last through seasons of work, rest, and repair. The site's layout, from the clustered halls to the communal workshop, mirrored those in Greenland and Iceland so closely that the Ingstads could overlay plans from one world onto another. The finds at Lansog's Meadows confirmed what legends had long suggested. Norse explorers not only reached North America, they built, worked, and lived here. Yet, as scientific methods advanced, questions about exactly when and how long they stayed would demand even greater precision. A solar storm that swept across the planet in the year 993 left a signature in the atmosphere, an invisible spike of radioactive carbon. More than 1,000 years later, this cosmic fingerprint would become the key to unlocking the precise timeline of Viking activity in North America. In a quiet laboratory at the University of Groningen, dendrochronologist Margot Queetums and her team worked through stacks of ancient timber from Lance o Meadows. Each sample held a story, but the real breakthrough came when they measured the carbon-14 content, ring by ring, searching for that unmistakable spike. The process began with the careful selection of wood fragments, showing both the inner rings and the outer bark edge. These details mattered. Only wood with the waney edge preserved could reveal exactly when the tree was cut down. As Queetem's team scanned the growth rings, they found it, the 993 carbon anomaly. From that point, they counted forward year by year until the final ring. The result was astonishing. 3 different trees, all felled in the year 1021. Metal tool marks on the wood confirm the work of Norse hands, not indigenous axes or natural breakage. Traditional radiocarbon dating had always left a margin of error, sometimes spanning decades. This method, using the cosmic ray event as a timestamp, narrowed the date to a single year. The evidence was undeniable. Vikings had cut trees at Lance o Meadows exactly 1,000 years before the study was published. For the first time, legend was pinned to the calendar, transforming saga and artifact into a precise moment in history. This breakthrough forced scholars to reconsider the old narrative and open the door to a broader timeline of Norse activity in the Americas. Patricia Sutherland spent decades combing through Arctic collections, piecing together clues that pointed far beyond Newfoundland. On Baffin Island, her team uncovered whetstones flecked with bronze, an alloy unfamiliar to local cultures but standard in Norse toolkits. At the Nanook site, a small stone crucible revealed traces of high-temperature bronze melting, a process that required skills and materials unknown in the Arctic before European arrival. These finds, woven among spun yarn and European-style woodworking, suggested that the Norse footprint stretched deep into the Canadian Arctic. Yet, the evidence was never straightforward. Radiocarbon dates from these sites spanned centuries, and the layers mingled artifacts from Dorset, Thule, and possible Norse hands. Critics argued that some items could be indigenous innovations, or that centuries of reuse had blurred the lines between cultures. Sutherland's claims sparked heated debate, especially after her dismissal from the Canadian Museum of Civilization in 2012 left much of her data unpublished. Trade routes may have carried more than just rumors. In Greenland, archaeologists found butternut shells in Norse middens. Butternuts do not grow north of New Brunswick, hinting at journeys or exchanges that reached far into the forests of eastern Canada. Some scholars see these as signs of a network, with Norse visitors trading for resources beyond the Arctic Circle. Others urge caution, pointing to the lack of Norse artifacts in indigenous sites and the possibility of driftwood or natural copper explaining some finds. Remote sensing technology has added both promise and frustration. At Point Rossi in Newfoundland, satellite imagery revealed turf-like anomalies and traces of bog iron. Early excitement gave way to disappointment when further digs showed the features were natural, not Norse. This outcome reminded researchers that even the best technology can mislead, and that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Indigenous perspectives remain underrepresented in published research. While Norse sagas describe encounters with the people they called Skraelings, modern archaeological reports rarely include statements from Inuit or First Nations scholars. Community-led excavations and partnerships are now being called for to ensure that future discoveries reflect the full human story of these northern lands. For now, the evidence paints a picture of intermittent Norse presence, possible contact, and ongoing scholarly scrutiny, a mystery still waiting for its next chapter. History's boundaries shift every time new evidence surfaces. As fresh discoveries redraw the map of first contact, the story of who shaped this continent grows more complex and more contested. What we accept as fact today may be only the beginning. Share your thoughts below.